Here we have Toby, and this is Muffin. These are my two babies, and I've had them since Toby was born, and Muffin just adopted me one day. I was out here working on my boat, and she just showed up, and my neighbor that lives over there was helping me work on the boat, and basically I just assumed that she was his dog all day long because he's got a few dogs over there, and at the end of the day, there was no more neighbor. He had to go home and eat dinner with his family, and Muffin just kind of hung out here. So, long story short, I walked Muffin over and said, "Hey, you forgot your dog." And he looked at me and said, "That ain't my dog." And I said, "Oh." So I drove around looking for her home, looking for her owner, but apparently she just decided that she was going to find a new home and a new owner, and she picked me. So I kept her, and she's been mine ever since, and that was back in 2006. They are like my kids because I don't have kids, but they get to live a very nice country lifestyle out here. We have 80 acres. Do a lot of hunting and fishing. They get to do a lot of chasing me around on the four-wheeler and going for nice long walks out in the countryside here. But in the event of a real catastrophic SHTF scenario, unfortunately, these two guys would become excess baggage at some point. I'm pretty confident that I could probably, hang on to them for quite some time, but, if it was a multi-year long SHTF type scenario, I'm going to run out of food for them. Heck, I would run out of food for myself. I'm not even prepared to feed myself for a year, let alone my dog. So, this whole debate about whether Yankee Prepper's crazy or not is just, it's inhumane to think that you could and would maintain your dogs on little to no food. What are you going to do? You're gonna feed them crackers? And when you're starving to have crackers for yourself? It's just ridiculous, I was actually out at a brew club meeting. I do some home brewing beer, and one of the brew club people owns a vet shop, and she was talking about how some people come in and they want free services and they can't afford things, but she just can't afford to provide free services. Even when they say, "Oh, I'll pay you tomorrow, or I'll pay you next week or my next paycheck." She talked specifically about a gentleman that came in and said that, and she's just like, I can't do that. I'm sorry. I've been burnt too many times. And, he tried to give her a guilt trip like, well, I guess a 22 bullet will be a lot cheaper anyways, giving her the guilt trip like, hey, I'm going to have to go home and shoot my dog. But really, she said, hey, I understand if that's the situation you're in and your dog is terminally ill and he's suffering, and, that's what you got to do. That's what every dog owner takes upon themselves the day they bring home the cute furry little puppy, or the day they adopt, the mature dog, or the day that a dog like Muffin here adopts you and you decide to keep that dog as your pet and your companion. You are realizing and recognizing that sure, she's going to provide you with unconditional love and happiness, and she's going to be loyal to you until the day she dies, but that day will come. Don't kid yourself about this. That day will come. No matter if the SHTF never happens or if it happens tomorrow, there will be a time when you have to take that decision very seriously, and you have to decide, okay, whether it's 20 years from now and the oldest dog that ever lived and she's in massive pain from cancer or tumors or whatever, you have to decide as an owner to take care of her and to put her out of her misery. And the same thing goes for those of us that should, heaven forbid, should we reach an SHTF scenario, it is unfortunate, but it's true. Our beloved companions will have to pass on to the next life. And, it's not something I'm looking forward to or, that I want to have happen. And, it's honestly the worst thing I can possibly think of, because like I said, I don't have kids, and these guys are like my kids. So to think that there's going to be a time when I have to make that decision, whether the SHTF comes or not, it's just a reality that every dog owner must face. Whether you can afford to take them to the vet if the SHTF doesn't come and put them down, or whether you've got to ask a trusted friend. In my case, it would probably be a brother or my father to terminate them in an SHTF scenario. I'd probably take them to the vet if they got really sick at this point in time. But neither of these guys they're both healthy dogs. I don't think they're going to have any kind of problems like that anytime in the near future. But regardless, this is a reality that everybody with a pet has to realize, that they're not humans. And as much as you'd like to think that you can maintain and sustain yourself in a worst case scenario while maintaining your dog, you're kidding yourself. You really are. And you need to think about that very seriously. I'm not suggesting that you eat your dogs, but imagine if you were in a world where you had starvation and malnutrition throughout your entire family. Imagine a world where you haven't had a square meal in months, and all you've eaten are, found items, dumpster diving type things, which of course after a while that's going to get real scarce. If all you're sustaining yourself on is that, a little bit of protein is going to start looking real good. And I'm not saying that I could eat my dog. Honestly, that's something I don't even want to think about. I have a hard enough time just recognizing and realizing that at some point in time in an SHTF scenario, I might have to kill my dogs, or I might have to have somebody kill them for me. But to think, that they might have to become a potential food source, it's a reality, but it's a reality that we all may have to face in that situation. I mean, it's not a pretty thing. It's not a pretty picture, but it's a reality that you may have to face. If you've got no strength to do anything, look at the movie Alive, where people were forced to eat the dead remains in the Andes Mountains of their soccer teammates. If people would do that in a scenario that they absolutely had to in order to survive, then I much as I hate to think about it, I'm sure that if I had to survive, my dogs would become a potential food source. And, for what it's worth, that's just my take on it. Take it for what you will. I know this is a very controversial subject. Looks like we've had some deer here in the yard digging for their own potential food sources. We're in Michigan here. It's the middle of the wintertime. We've got about 3-4 inches of snow on the ground, and the deer are scavenging through the grass in the yard trying to find, probably eating these dead leaves, actually. I don't know what else would be here that they would be eating. But, the deer have it rough right now. This is their rough time of year. This is when they've got the SHTF has hit the fan for the deer, and it happens every year like this, where they start scrounging for, whatever they can find underneath the snow. But that's a reality for the deer, and they face it every year, and they're prepared for it every year. This is something that human beings, need to think about and need to be prepared for. But anyways, that's a laser beam of truth signing out. Peace.